Okay, so now we're going to talk about some predictors that are based on what might be considered stable characteristics of a worker. Eh, Stability is in the eye of the beholder, okay? But these predictors, the biggest of them, I mean, and there are going to be many, but the biggest one is this general cognitive ability. Now, there is this belief that there is a general cognitive intelligence. That is to say, if you are good at mathematical skills, you are generally speaking pretty good at reading and verbal skills as well. There's a connection that's tied together, okay? And that this general cognitive ability is kind of necessary for success at any job. So we're going to get to some specific predictors. If you want to be an auto mechanic, let's give you a test where you make sure you know what the tools are or something, okay? But this general cognitive ability is felt to be something that will predict success at any occupation, right? And it's a very controversial topic. I mean, there's lots of controversy surrounding it, but this idea that human beings exhibit a general cognitive ability that allows them to succeed in any or all situations is not new. And so this is a sample of what it might be. So say, for example, I have a whole bunch of skill sets down the side: paragraph comprehension, sentence completion, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And it turns out that which ones? 1, 2, 3, 3. The top three, paragraph, sentence, and word meaning, are all connected heavily. Look at these correlations here. They're heavily connected to each other. Okay? And you can see over here, counting dots, identifying shapes, multiplication are all clearly tied together under some numerical skill, and then finally some visual skill. But yet at the same time, every one of these 9 is strongly correlated with some general ability, okay? Some general intelligence ability. Yes, a lot of people think it is the most important predictor, and I, based on everything I've read, I'd have to agree that yes, if you had to pick just one predictor, this is the one to pick. Okay, and it does a fairly good job. A validity coefficient of about 0.53. So if you square it, that's 0.25. So basically, it's saying if you know somebody's general cognitive ability, you can predict on average 25% of their job performance. That's not bad for something just as simple as just a general intelligence score. Okay. Oh, look at this. It predicts performance across multiple cultures. I didn't know about that one. Okay. I didn't know about that when I wrote it in articles. Okay. So all of this started actually and we described Yerkes earlier with the Army Alpha and the Army Beta, where during World War I, the Army, the military, came to Robert Yerkes and said, hey, find us a way to select for different officers and who is appropriate to go what. Okay? All right. The Wonderlic test was actually 1939. It was a general form. They used it in World War II, etc. But it became very, very famous when the Dallas Cowboys, they used it to forecast football players' performance. And so it was used for many years when they were talking about which football player will they draft. It was part of the package. And so the idea is general cognitive performance will predict success at any job. I don't care if that job is an assembly line worker or an NFL football player. Okay, so some of the most famous, some of the Wonderlic scores, just for fun. Only one perfect score ever came out of the NFL. A punter from Harvard. The lowest score ever was a Dallas Cowboy. Well, here we got some Cowboys and some Packers. All right, I'm a big Packer fan, so there we go. All right, pretty interesting. All right. However, when it comes to the general cognitive ability, the biggest measure is the WACE, or the Wechsler scales. The Wechsler scales, the WAIS, the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scales. There's other WAISs, the WISC, the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children. So there's different levels. But it's all based on this idea that there is a common general intelligence. So the Wechsler, the WAIS rather, we will achieve a full scale IQ score and a separate verbal score and a separate performance score and a separate verbal comprehension. So you'll get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 different scores, but they're ultimately all tied together into one larger full scale IQ. Okay? But as I said, in some tasks, or some jobs rather, that though of course this general cognitive ability is hugely important, but perhaps more important, or adding to the package, right? Because remember, we don't necessarily want to just use one predictor. You would not want to predict job success only based on general intelligence score. So maybe you will do general intelligence score and then you will do something like this. And so they have very specific mechanical ability tests, for example, and this is for people that want to do airplane repair people. They'll have this mechanical test questions, all right? Which of the following tools is best for driving school? Okay, I can do that one, all right? Which of the boxes is the heaviest? I think the answer is you cannot say because you don't know what's in the boxes, all right? I can probably do most of these. Although I must say, when it came to question 13, my brain was just blown away, okay? I could probably do it if I really pulled all my cognitive resources together. Or here would be a very specific spatial ability test, okay? And so this would be all about mental rotation, and so this would be good for somebody, say for example, that wanted to go into architecture, okay? Or here perhaps is a clerical ability test, so it's a specific ability test to test for those skills that might be clerical in nature, right? So compare the names, right? Make sure they're the same. Are they the same? Yes or no. Compare the numbers. Are they the same? Yes or no. Okay. Or psychomotor tests, right? So if you have a job on an assembly line, or if you're going to be an electrician or something like that. And so one of the most famous of them is the Purdue pegboard test. And so what you're doing on the Purdue pegboard test is you simply you have 5 minutes, so it's a speed test. You have 5 minutes. Do as many, take this board, put as many pegs in as you can, and then if you get to the end, take pegs out, okay? And so clearly they're measuring your dexterity skills, okay? And again, depending on the job, it can have some fairly decent validity scores, okay? But again, it depends on the job, okay? Another interesting thing is the strong interest inventory. And the idea is it will classify you into the things that you're interested in. Because the idea is, even if you have the general cognitive ability and the specific skills for a job, but if it's just not your cup of tea, you're not going to succeed at it because you're going to get bored or something. So it's a way to attempt to match what you are interested in to the job. And again, from an employer's perspective, they do not want to hire somebody that's going to quit in 6 months. They don't want that. And that's what this is doing, is saying, will this person stick to this job? Personality tests. And these are very controversial. Number one, they're being used by people that are not qualified to use them most of the time, because they're just, the MMBI, for example, has been used for selection to find out if somebody is mentally unstable or something like that. Obviously, faking is always a problem. Do they want this? Do they want that? It is what it is. I mean, I don't know. Work values, this is actually interesting, and that is to say, do you fit? Like, I like this. If you place a high value on companionship and I place you in a job that is cutthroat, you're not gonna, it's not gonna fit you. You're not going to. And so the work values tests identify values like work conditions, how much you get paid, relationships, how often you have an opportunity to interact with colleagues, and things of this nature. Obviously, prior experience is one of the predictors that is used, and it's dirt cheap. All right, it costs nothing to measure prior experience. You just take it right off the resume. Okay, and so we find that not all experience is the same. So some experience is good experience, some is low quality experience. Sometimes experience isn't necessarily good because the industry is changing so rapidly that even if you've had 20 years of experience, 19 of those were completely irrelevant to what the job looks like now. Okay? So instead of experience, maybe somehow knowledge of the field is a better stand-in. Okay? Work samples are fairly common. That is to say, the idea is the best predictor of future performance is past performance. And so if I pull out some of your past work, and if it's good, then you can move forward. And so they do this, like, say, for example, a driving test, right? You want to predict who will be successful on the road. Who will be successful. But yes, when I interviewed at Texas Wesleyan University, the very most important part of the job, or the application, or the interview process, was a teaching demonstration. And because my presentation was effective, you predict that my future presentations will be effective. So can be very, very useful, but now very labor intensive. Okay? So we'll come back and we'll talk about some more predictors in the next section.